Hi, Chad.
Hey, Rashad.
This is weird for me mainly because I just came off my last trip of the year. I have an adventure company. Chad here, who is the OG of adventure, trying to catch up with him, but make a long story short, we had basically 6 months this year of just go from Colorado to Oregon to Moab as far as doing these epic adventures focusing on BIPOC folks, specifically black folks around camping outside. So this is kind of cool to be speaking to an audience right now. Because typically it's like campers asking questions about where do steaks go, where does the tent go, are there bears out here? So I appreciate y'all. You want to dive in as far as our story? You want to go first, or introductions, background?
Great. Well, yeah. My name is Chad Brown, founder of Love is King and also Soul River Inc. In a nutshell, Soul River Inc. is about bringing veterans and inner city youth together on deployments into wild spaces where we create mentorship, also leadership within conservation. And Love is King is centered around creating safe spaces in the outdoors for BIPOC to be able to roam further and bolder, dismantling the hate, ignorance, and bigotry and racism that BIPOC face. And so Love is King is about taking a stand up and dismantling that. Yeah, in a nutshell.
So I'm Rashad Frazier, one of 3 co-founders for a company called Camp Yoshi. We launched literally 12 months ago. The idea was very simple, getting our community outside at a high level. I'm from the East Coast. Most of our friends who are like, you're going camping where, doing what, around who? Are you afraid? Are you scared? Are you worried about some crazy looking guy? So honestly, the goal was to kind of demystify what it means to get outside. So we launched a trip about October this time last year for a small group. You just pay one fee, you show up, all the gear is provided, the vehicles, the provisions. My background is a chef, so obviously for folks who are non-campers, offering food and cocktails makes it very easy to say yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, make a long story short, Camp Yoshi is an outdoor adventure brand focusing on black folks. The goal is to really kind of just bridge that gap between any fears or just hesitations they might have and making it as comfortable as possible for them to get outside and become stewards of these places. Because at this point, at the rate we're going right now, we're losing a lot of ground to fires and all types of development. So I almost feel like we're kind of behind the curve when it comes to catching up to city spaces and to advocate for these spaces as soon as possible. So thank you for having us. Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks. That's all we get. Thank you, the one person right here. All right, I guess we can walk off the stage now.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, this is, so Chad's been in the game longer than I have as far as outdoor brands or models trying to diversify the outdoors.
Yeah.
I think, so just to give you guys some backstory, I'm from North Carolina, moved to Portland, Oregon 2 years ago. My wife's at Nike, well, she was at Nike. Came out here and fell deeper in love with outdoors and nature. Growing up in North Carolina, fishing, hunting, camping was something we did a lot of. But growing up in North Carolina also meant there was a glaring, unspoken rule about you don't go further beyond that tree line. And there was reasons behind that. And my parents, I guess their trauma and their parents' trauma with outdoors prevented us from kind of really thinking beyond our little 30-acre plot of adventure. And I think coming out here kind of really opened up the rabbit hole for me as far as what the possibilities are. Back in March 2020 last year, when COVID hit, my catering company in New York City tanked. So I was pretty exposed. But camping, getting outside was something I was already doing a lot of. So I literally just cashed in my SBA disaster relief fund and opened up an adventure company, and here we are. But my background wasn't as a guide or an outfitter. I've literally been learning that on the fly. And I think the hope was always there to make it something that was kind of just temporary to kind of, hold me over, but just turn into something where I think the timing for launching that has been just perfection, because for a lot of our folks, we can't really go anywhere, And I think most of our campers are pretty well traveled, but the idea of exploring the U.S. and the West was so foreign to them that this idea of getting campers outside into the Colorados, the Moabs, the Oregons, it's almost like this foreign concept. But once they kind of get out there, they realize this is a safe space.
Yeah, it's really hard to try to find safe spaces for BIPOC. You know, you deal with a lot of different layers with those safe spaces. You know, and that generational racism that comes into play, the fear. You know, which a lot of people don't talk about. You know, but it's not just BIPOC. But when you start start opening the space and having that conversation about safe space, you start to realize that there's people beyond BIPOC that operates in fear, and it's something that no one doesn't talk about, especially if anyone's familiar with being in group dynamics in the outdoors or expeditions, and you have that alpha male that rise up, or an alpha strong individual mindset that rise up. It really shuns the person that's operating from a fear place, and you can never hear what's happening with them. And a lot of times they're quiet and silent, and they go through the process. And so, and that's bad. I mean, that can turn an expedition to the south, you know, and in a really, really bad way, you know. So you have to be able to open up the spaces for people, or all people, to be able to speak freely and share their concerns or their worries of what's going on, you know. So having to be able to establish safe spaces in the outdoors, especially what you're talking about, it's definitely needed, and it's something that is a call for all of us to look a little deeper within ourselves, because we're all leaders up in here, especially leaders and decision makers, to be able to start thinking about unique ways of how we can create those kind of safe spaces for all people, including BIPOC, you know. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. It's almost like, and I mean, speaking from just our campers' experiences, these are non-campers. They've never been to these places before. They're from New York, they're from LA, they're from really hyper-urban locations. So they come out to these spaces with their own baggage as far as presumptions, judgments. They see folks who look like the guy on the TV that might be a bad guy, and that's the same guy to help you change your tire, or helped you get some water from the well, or gave us some intel on a great, hot spring on the border of Nevada or somewhere. So it's almost twofold. It's a safe space for them to come out there and kind of have peace of mind, but also a safe space to kind of find out there's allies and supporters out here too that really want to see you win.
Right.
You know?
Right. And you're talking about like that campground. Like I remember when I was heading up to the Albert Desert. I don't know if anybody ever been out there, but it's a beautiful place. And I was out there actually with my girlfriend, and you know, while we drove in, there was like shotgun holes in the signs. Yeah. You know, to me as a veteran, I mean, this, you know, I get that. I mean, I can go with the flow and stuff like that, but I'm already, you know, I'm used to seeing that kind of stuff. But anyway, but to her, that was a big red flag.
Oh yeah.
That stood out greatly. That was like, stop. Yeah. I'm not going in there. I'm not going to camp, et cetera, like that, you know. And, you know, but it was just, that was her first time experiencing that, you know. And but signs can set off triggers, can make people feel uncomfortable to go into spaces. And so again, it goes back. I think it's really critical, important to speak to those decision makers and those leaders, because that's where, if we're talking about creating change and creating those safe spaces and national parks and city parks, et cetera, we need to be talking to them, because that's how we're going to have to make those safe spaces happen, basically.
So to your point, it's funny because we typically camp out in remote locations. So BLM land, I mean, unfortunately to say this too, I think going forward to scale what we're doing too, it might have to be more of a balance between public and private land, because they're getting so much more visitors in these areas. All the best campsites are kind of gone now that you like hold on to. But that being said, like you reach out to like a BLM manager, giving them your route, where you're going, it's usually one person. Yeah. So if she's managing or he's managing millions of acres, you already know if it's a shotgun, shut up sign, or issues happening out there where people are practicing proper leave no trace items. Those triggers, they're there, but the reality is a lot of these places are so under capacity as far as
they're hard to manage.
Yeah, exactly.
They're hard to manage. And you're right. I mean, you have a park ranger or someone from state, and they're probably covering, you know, a good 30 miles of acres, of land, and it's a hard thing to do. And that's when we have to, like through Love is King, we're trying to work and with the state and also with Kate Brown on a system to where it helps create safe spaces by bringing in the community to where it helps support that park ranger, basically. We become empowered when we are involved with that, and it doesn't put me in a police position, but it does put me in a position to where Love is King is about reaching into your community and supporting your neighbor, et cetera, taking a stand for someone who can't speak for themselves, taking a stand for handicapped, disabled, elderly, et cetera, and so that's the kind of love that we're trying to establish, in the backcountry and also in our city parks for everyone to feel comfortable, but
Yeah, I mean, the backcountry right now is probably the best places to kind of get out to. I don't know if you guys went out this summer to a lot of these national parks. They're busy. I mean, they're really busy. Most of the stewards in these spaces are really requesting us to kind of go above and beyond the locations outside the parks to get away from all the capacity. So I really love the fact that with Camp Yoshi, we intentionally tell our campers, yeah, you can go to Zion National Park or Arches on your own time. We're going beyond that. That's just the front door. There's more to see. There's more to explore. So I think almost with us, and I'm sure the same thing with you and you, Chad, and your user group, is trying to educate them on, let's be stewards, but also in a way where you're not making the system worse.
Absolutely.
And it's also their way of kind of saying like, yo, you don't have to go to Grand Canyon and have a good time. You can go to the Slot Canyons in Utah. Like there's other options for you, man. So it's, my wife right now is like, you want to another meeting to talk about Camp Yoshi when you can have a break for yourself? But it's been such a rad year because, I mean, on one level, I knew camping from an amateur perspective. As a professional guide or outfitter now, you're meeting a lot of these allies in these spaces and you're hearing their concerns and their challenges. So it's almost like we're not just putting together programming for our campers to have a good time. We're putting together programming to make sure they have a good time and the locations and the land is preserved, is protected for the next person, So we're not bringing out glass bottles or we're doing a fire. I'm bringing my trigger instead of a campfire because you can't do any fire bans. So it's been pretty cool to watch the world respond to getting outside. And I think the timing for Camp Yoshi has been amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me about Love is King. I want to hear more about that because we haven't had a chance to actually hang out. This is our first time really having a one-on-one in front of a whole audience.
What? This year was a really strong year. I mean, we finished really strong. It was. I'm used to working with a lot of youth and veterans, and especially when I'm in the company of vets. Just for training, they get it. There's a lot of things I don't have to say. There's a culture that we operate in, and we understand. But when I start working with civilians, it's a whole different ballgame. I'm just like, really?
In what way, Chad?
No, don't do that. So it's been quite challenging. Because where I started at, I built it. And now I do these expeditions, and I'm taking BIPOC. I reach out to BIPOC communities, BIPOC leaders who literally have zero backcountry camping experience, and I put them on expeditions, and I send them up to the Arctic Circle. I know it's kind of crazy, right? And so we go to the Arctic Circle, and there's a series of events they go through, but they're challenged on the grit level, literally challenged on the grit level, survival, thinking out of the box, back to the basics, basically. If you lose your fork, you got to make one, period. I mean, if you want to eat, or just old school style, use your fingers, whatever, but it was quite a challenging experience I guided total of 10 BIPOC leaders up into the Arctic Circle, challenging dynamics, civilian mindset. Woo! Wow. I don't even know where to start, but
just to preface,
it's a difference between trained and untrained.
The difference between Chad and my organization is we're entry level. Our campers coming in as fresh, new users to this space. Chad is like a 2-year, 3-year progression. So when
you get there, you can come over here. But yeah, but I would say probably the most challenging as a leader of leading a team, especially a team of professionals, is just the dynamics that you bring into a wild space, and that dynamics, and especially BIPOC, which you have to prepare yourself for leadership-wise, and also it can exist in leadership of a company, is the unlayer of pain. And what women and men has went through all their lives. And so when you're looking at a woman that's 50 years old, and she comes on this expedition, and everybody understands how the wild can unravel you. But this unravels in a different way, because now you're talking like an African-American woman or a Hispanic woman, where her voice been muzzled for 50 years. You know, and now nature is setting in, and it's opening and unraveling this in a really, really fast speed. And so how do you manage that type of level of pain?
So on our trips, we call those moments that are hard to articulate.
Yeah.
You see the stars for the first time, and it just hits you.
Yeah.
Like a ball of like it just hits you. Or you're finally being able to kind of hear your thoughts in your voice. Your phone's not even being used.
Right.
You don't have a signal. Like to see the humanity show up and be present for the first time in a grown person. I think our oldest camper is 68. And she was the most skilled and experienced out of all of our campers, who typically range from 33 to 45. And to watch her drop so many gems of our campers about how to do this. And she camps in Michigan, so like snow, cold, ice, some real OG badass types. Can I curse? Sorry. But those moments, man, when we're literally seeing people's humanity, like people,
and just because it's the pain, that doesn't mean you actually have to do something with that, right? You know, you have to learn how to sit with that and what you're talking about. And right now, she or he is going through a process, and you just need to learn how to create that kind of container of safe space for her or him to be able to operate it, you know. And when they get to that next phase, that's when they can actually appreciate. But it's really interesting when you see it, because in, you know, Caucasians, a lot of folks, you kind of, you're out there, but there's this mindset of like, oh, come to nature, come to the river, and, you know, and relax. Oh, it's so beautiful. Some BIPOC can't get to that place. And it's hard, you know, but they'll eventually get there, but there's a process they have to go through, just because it's they're unraveling themselves, you know, the dynamics is different.
It's almost like you're describing the oh my God, what is it? The privilege of access to leisure. That in itself is a powerful thing, because most of my friends, I mean, especially living here in Portland now, most of my adventure buddies are white folks, you know, women, men, amazing people. But they speak about their experiences getting out with their parents, hunting, fishing, fly fishing, some amazing experiences. Even their parents describing how the land looked back in the day in the 60s and the 40s. You know, those are really amazing stories, but it was all from a place of leisure.
Right.
So when I tell them, like, wait, my parents' perspective was completely different. You go to the woods. You
well, my parents say, boy, where you going? You know? You know, and my mom will say, well, let me know, because I got to pray for you, son. I got to pray for you. And I'm like, Mom, and then when I go camping, my dad said, why you got to go camping by yourself or go to the river by yourself? Why don't you go over there where all those people are at the campground, Chad? You know, I was like, no.
My mom is the most non-technology person. She bought me a satellite phone just so she could keep up with me. Seriously, like I got a gift in the mail. She was like, hey, baby, you get the gift. I was like, what is this? She bought me a sat phone just so you could have access to me, man. But that's how paranoid, but justified paranoia they have, you know, dealt with. So. Yeah, man, it is a powerful tool that I think we have the opportunity to get adults and young folks outside. Yeah. For me personally, coming from the East Coast, so much of my community has always never really had access to the Boy Scouts, getting outside as a kid. So to see them as an adult, you know, dentist Jerry is now just Jerry outside, you know, and he's living his best life, you know. But it's powerful to watch and see, and I think even from a entrepreneur perspective, obviously we're here to, you know, thrive and grow the brand, but at the same time, the humanity factor is just, it makes you want to see more of it, man. It's like, I wish I could bring more folks out here. I can't bring a busload of people to the locations, obviously, but I wish there was more capacity to do more. But, here we are. So, I don't know, man.
Well, that's why we're paving the way, and we make that work and make it happen the best way we can, and whichever allies and leaders that we can connect with and build those bridges, that's what community is about.
1,000%. I mean, the most exciting thing about what we're doing is mainly just letting people know that look like us. Like, look, there are people who don't look like us who want to see you win. And before you want to demonize the world or want to just say, there's no one out there supporting us, that's not true, man. Like, I think Camp Yoshi, and I'm sure you can say the same thing, all of our success this year has been mostly because folks that don't look like me have opened up a lot of doors to say, like, look, we can give you a shot, do your own thing. I don't want to get in the way. This is your show. But if you want to know about a certain route, here's a GPS coordinate. If you want to know about a certain contact that does something really cool around guiding and hunting or whatever, this is another contact. So it's been a good year, man.
It's been a good year. Yeah. It's been a lot of blessings, a lot of blessings, a lot of building blocks, relationships. And I think you're looking at the time here, but I'll lean more into, I think, I like to practice the art of building social wealth, and I tend to live in that space. There's that transactional, but I tend to be more into that social wealth of that's the power gain off of relationships that supports off the work that you do, that lends itself to the power of access and opportunity of doors opening up, built off of the resume or the work that you have created and laid out, for folks to benefit from, and I think there's a big power to that, and Love is King and Soul River Inc. has been built off of that 100%, 100%, but
We get so many emails for folks that's reaching out saying, hey, I saw your story in this article. I have some intel on this. I mean, I wish I had more than in the beginning, because early on, when they launched Camp Yoshi, literally it was our article in Condé Nast, along with the main article that says, white supremacists attack the Capitol building. Yeah. So we got all this love from folks who saw the value, but also a lot of people were like, wait, this is reverse racism, and this is backwards. How dare you put up an assignment that says we're focusing on BIPOC and black folks?
Yeah.
But the reality is, what I've heard from a lot of our campuses, they've never felt like they've been invited. They never actually were said, hey, here is space for you.
Right.
This is what's welcoming you.
Right.
And they feel like they're being spoken to finally. So I think that type of intentionality is too often missed. I think folks get caught up in the word game, so sometimes it has to be as simple as it is.
Yeah, and that voice has not still yet been invited. We're still trying to break those doors down, especially in the conservation space where I live at, more of bringing BIPOC leaders, because after this expedition trip, this exposure to the Arctic, is that we connect them with conservation groups, forward-thinking conservation groups that help BIPOC leaders step into these spaces as conservation leaders and work on existing campaigns to help protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, since we're already up there, and also the Gwich'in Nation, which we do a lot of work with indigenous communities, the Gwich'in, the Navajo, and the Quinault, and so the reason why we're doing it is because we're trying to open up spaces along with conservation groups to bring those BIPOC leaders' voices to the table. And so when that happens, there's it changes the dynamics, within the conservation world, and their voices have a lot to say when it comes to protecting our public lands and our fresh water and our indigenous brothers and sisters, and so, but we still have a lot of work we got to do, but that's the work right there.
Just curious, what's your season for, I guess, trips? Like, when does it start, when does it end?
My season is, it runs around like late May, and it ends, I would say, sometimes early September. And I'm running two organizations at the same time, and it's kind of crazy and nuts, but that's my big season, but for me personally, I basically do trips year round, which I'm heading up to the Arctic December 1 on a polar expedition, which, golly, it's negative 60 below zero. I've been in that weather before. That weather just burns your face. But anyway, I'm heading up there. And I'm going up there, right? But yeah. So, but But yeah, I'm heading up there. I got an invite from the Nupiat, this Nupiat woman, and I'm going up to, number one, continue to build my relation with the Nupiat people, but also doing a photo expedition to help capture and tell her story, basically. But I go year round. I probably have at least total 2 or 3 polar expeditions that I'm working on, and then I'll kick back in with youth and veterans and BIPOC leaders in the summertime.
That's awesome. Yeah, right now we're going to Puerto Rico in January, so sorry about that comparison. Yeah.
That's nice.
One of our main photographers, beautiful Puerto Rican kid. He's always been a big advocate for just how the U.S. or I guess American folks come down there and just look at the country from a lens of tourism, and not from a lens of there's culture here, beautiful culture. So we're going to bring some of our alumni campers down there for a pretty unique experience January. So maybe we should swap one year.
Yeah. I'm all about that. You can have my bunny down suit any day.
I mean, honestly, that's been the biggest issue for us is how do you scale getting outside? You know, making it sustainable for, you know, your team, your employees, your staff.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to overwhelm some places we're going to, but at the same time, it's got to figure out what are some other locations we can do year round. Yeah. So Puerto Rico kind of popped up mainly because one of our team members was already from there and kind of showed us the possibilities, and then 2, trying to make it more consistent year round versus just saying the outfitter season is literally spring through late summer, you know, which is tough to kind of carry that much overhead.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we operate in the same space, but our way of working is a little different. I mean, I'm running expeditions, and so, you know, the reality, just throw $1 out, my expeditions, you know, can run anywhere between 75 to a little bit over 150K, you know, and that's travel. That's all travel, especially when you're bringing in bush planes and you're going into really high remote places. And
how many days is that typically?
It can range. It's usually a total of like 2 weeks 2 weeks to almost, like I say, from 7 days to 2 weeks. Kind of depends. Yeah. And it's not even food. I wish we can have you on the trip because, I know you do amazing work and everything, but we're stuck with like Mountain House food. Yeah. Just add water. There you go. But yeah, a lot of my cost goes into travel, bush plane pilots, and also specialized gear, especially when I'm looking into doing polar expeditions. That requires a different type of specialized gear than your average, gear that you would wear, basically. Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, even with us, we're not as advanced as that, but I think ultimately our trips are 4 days. Yeah. We're doing some little more low-hanging fruit, but the gear and the cost of getting people from point A to point Z is very high. Yeah. I think one thing we're doing differently next year is making our trips back-to-back weeks in the same location. This year we did a lot of hopping around, so to make it a little more logistically feasible, we'll do a spot for 3 weeks in the same location, shipping all the gear, and go that way. Because this year we got killed with pop-up bathrooms, Takibi fire pits, zippers on tents. Oh, dude, my zipper bill was insane.
I got into a point where actually this is my first year I was able to do it, where I was able to establish a locker up in Fairbanks, Alaska. And Fairbanks is it has turned into my my base camp basically, and that's like when I'm there in Fairbanks. It was 1 or 2 days. We do gear assessment, we do our shopping, etc., and then we start to meet everything on either the tarmac or the vehicles, basically to get ready to head up on the Dalton Highway. But we have a locker, basically. We call it basically the Arctic locker, and we keep all our gear up there, so that way we don't have to because usually I'm traveling up. It's like $3,000 to $5,000 just baggage fees at the airport.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It's crazy. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be a smarter way. I mean, there weren't many comps for doing this. I know when you launched your business, were there any comps already existing as far as trying to
comps?
Yeah, no, as far as like other brands or companies doing something very similar, feel like we're figuring a lot of it on our own.
You know what? I charted out a kind of a new route. I don't know, at that time there wasn't anything. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of people thought I was crazy, you know, because actually the U.S. Fish and Wildlife came in and they stepped in and they said we weren't going to allow you to do this. And so what I did was I reached out to one of my Navy buddies who was a pilot, and see if he can do an exercise of flying C-130s into the Arctic and drop us off. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife thought I was nuts and crazy, but they became my partner. And
wow.
Yeah, so it was a hard way of trying to get that done, but yeah.
So in 2024, Camp Yoshi will be hanging out with you.
Come on, brother.
Cool.
Let's make it happen.